Well, we're halfway through the Florida legislative session now. We've got with the state rep Alex Andrade. It's been a fast-paced month, hasn't it?
It's gone by quick. Lots going on.
All right, let's talk about there were several bills that we talked about at the beginning of the session. You were partnering with Senator Gates on bills about HMC being independent, property insurance, charter schools. How how are those moving through?
Well, IHMC and the charter school bills are in good position towards the end of session. They've both moved through committee pretty easily so far, and there's plenty of time now to pass them. So I'm very comfortable with those two. With the Public Service Commission bill, I think it'll get a hearing on the House side, but I don't think it'll get a hearing in time to pass. I've been working on getting it amended to match up with Senator Gates's bill, and so hopefully it'll be heard next week in its first committee, but we'll see if that's enough time for it to actually pass. And then the insurance bill, just
Well, and that one's the one that would, with the Public Service Commission, that would put more skilled people on the board as well as more transparency. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I'm still working the bill, and it's not dead yet, but it's running out of time for sure.
Well, that's part of it. All right. What about the property insurance? You get much movement on it or interest?
Philosophically, yes. A lot of the concepts on the property insurance bill, because of the news and the outcome of one specific subcommittee here in the House, where we actually put insurance commissioners under oath to talk about the reports coming out about insurance companies hiding assets, that policy is moving. It's just moving in a different vehicle. But while, if I was vain and had a big ego, I'd care if it was my bill or not. I really just care about good policy passing, and so I think that one has legs, and it'll move through the committee process and legislative process more smoothly.
Well, and what we're talking about for viewers and listeners is that there was a pretty damning report that was revealed during a committee hearing where it was the Department of Insurance had found that they had been shifting monies around to make it look like they were losing when the parent company was raking in billions of dollars. So it did sort of change the story completely from where you and Don were going, but it actually, like you said, I think philosophically, we're going to see some real movement in regulating these companies better.
Yeah, and Senator Gates looks omniscient on that one because I mean it was his brainchild, his concept, and it just so happened he was spot on with it. So kudos to Senator Gates for spotting the issue before everybody else.
Now, how's the marijuana bill, the one that you were looking to expand the availability of licenses for marijuana and for permits to use it?
I anticipate a very severely pared down version of that bill will be heard next week. I've reviewed the proposed amendment for that severely pared down version of the bill, and frankly, I'll just take what I can get. There's a lot in my budget because, again, I oversee the Department of Health budget on marijuana policy that I'm working through. But as far as the bill, I think all that the House is comfortable moving is a change from a annual re-up for licenses for medical marijuana cards to biannual. So every 2 years you have to re-up your license, meaning you'll save $700 every year, but every other year you'll still have to pay about $700 for your medical marijuana card. We'll also put an exemption in for veterans so that they don't have to pay the license fee at all.
Okay. Now, the other one was, you were, and this has been something you've been talking about for a while, is, the bonds that, when someone does a bond for a loved one or friend, the expectation, if they show up for court, they should get their bond back. But that hasn't been what's been happening. That's been used to pay fines and all sorts of fees. And the person is out what they did in good faith to try to be sure they got someone there. How's that working?
That one, I actually had a great conversation with Judge Maney today, Pat Maney. He's the chair of Judiciary Appropriations. He had some discomfort with the concept just because there's that specter. Remember from like when you had the riots during the Black Lives Matter movement, when folks were posting bonds so people could go out and commit more crimes. He had some
Right.
heartburn over the specter about that, but I think with some tweaks, making the payment of those fines and fees like an opt-in or an opt-out. So if you go and post a cash bond, you can opt into paying for fines and fees or opt out from paying fines and fees. I think that might be something he'll go for. So I was working with him on that today. It passed through its first committee very comfortably, and hopefully it'll keep moving so long as I can make sure Judge Maney's comfortable with it.
Okay. The big story over last week and this week is about tax cuts. We've got the governor has been floating the idea of getting rid of property taxes altogether. His latest is $1,000 refund or rebate or whatever, however that's going to work out, versus what the House Speaker has done an actual rollback of sales tax. What's your take, and how's that flying? Both those two ideas flying in the House right now.
I think every Florida House member is supportive of both tax cuts. We're supportive of putting on the ballot an initiative to vote to do away with property tax in Florida. We've been comfortable with that. I think where the conflict came into play is we proposed a permanent cut to sales tax. It would have been a savings of hundreds of dollars for every family in Florida every year going forward. And for whatever reason, I think because it wasn't his idea, Governor DeSantis is railing against it. So his proposal about $1,000 to homesteaded property owners is really a proposal to take sales taxes paid for by everyone in Florida, because again, 80% of all sales taxes are paid by Florida residents. Take those sales taxes paid and just cut checks to one-time checks to people in exchange for their opposition to a permanent sales tax cut. I think it's wrong. I've never seen a governor, a conservative Republican governor, fight so hard against a permanent tax cut before. It's just bizarre times here in Tallahassee.
Yeah, it really seems smacks of desperation on some just when you've got a governor that has to do a press conference at least 4 days a week, he's got to find something to talk about. This is bothersome to me. Because what the speaker has proposed, Danny Perez, is something that every Floridian would see benefit from. If it's tied to property tax, if you're renting, you're not going to, or you're a veteran who doesn't pay property taxes, a disabled veteran, you're not going to see any benefit.
You're not going to get this free check handout. Yeah, it smacks of socialism to me. I mean, like, what's DeSantis going to do next? Like, take over the means of production? Like, he's literally just taking sales tax money, cutting a check, and the condition is you got to oppose this sales tax cut. It's kind of ridiculous when we should, as conservatives, be supporting both tax cuts equally. I don't understand his play here. It's almost like he can't get out of his own way right now.
Now, looking at your committee, you've got healthcare budget subcommittee. What are some of the hot items that y'all are discussing now?
Well, we're still unpacking the loss of $160 million. Received an appropriation 3 years ago to pay a federal fine of $160 million, and ACA put it in the wrong bank account and used it for cash flow. So they had to admit to us as the legislature that because, I mean, it's a level of managerial incompetence to only reconcile your Medicaid program once a year. They only reconciled their books once a year for a $35 billion Medicaid program. So since discovering that they just misplaced, misused, lost $160 million, they've committed to reconciling their budgets every month to make sure they don't lose that much money ever again. But we're still trying to unpack exactly what happened, where that money went, and how exactly it could have been lost in their possession. But the fact of the matter is, they're asking us for $160 million more this year to actually pay the fine this time. The craziest part to me is that the secretary, the person that oversaw the mismanagement of this money, got promoted and is now the governor's chief of staff.
That's significant. I mean, it's. I mean, It seems like this session we're uncovering more things like this. You mentioned the insurance commissioner, that report that somehow got lost or needed to be checked again and it never got released. You're looking at this when we're talking about healthcare needs around the state and trying to. We don't know what healthcare is going to look like at the federal level coming over this next few years. This is pretty damning.
I think the theme this year that we're really discovering is that the governor is a great legislator, but he's not the best manager.
Hmm. Well, when you're not going to work every day and you're traveling around the country for media events, that kind of something's going to suffer in that process. What other big issues are you seeing out there that y'all are talking about at the leadership level?
Well, for me, my next task is to compare the Senate and the House budgets in the healthcare and figure out where Senator Jay Trumbull and I align right now to hopefully close out our budget without, declaring an impasse in negotiations. We're going to push through this permanent tax cut to sales tax. We're going to hope the Senate takes it up, and we're going to see what the governor does with it once we pass it. I think that there's a story that's kind of brewing right now related to Hope, Florida, and some of the strong arm tactics that the governor's office has used to force state vendors to donate to Hope, Florida, that I'm looking into. And once I have more details on that, I'll be sure to let you know, Rick.
I know for our listeners and viewers, what's Hope, Florida?
Hope Florida is a DSO. It's called a direct support organization. It's basically a charity that's tied to a state agency. This was a charity that Casey DeSantis really wanted to start, and the concept has changed and morphed over time to now being anything and everything related to getting people off of welfare. They claim a lot of big numbers. They claim they've helped 30,000 people get off welfare, but those numbers track with the number of people who've rolled off of Medicaid anyway, so I'm not sure if those numbers match up. The governor really wants to codify Hope Florida now, his wife's kind of pet project into statute and dedicate state funds to it. But there's reports of them coercing state employees to work directly for this DSO instead of doing their regular legislatively authorized day jobs. And again, there's reports about them pressuring state vendors prior to contract awards to donate to the program. So I'm looking into those things for the next week or two, and I'm concerned about the lack of transparency and their unwillingness to actually disclose who their donors are, what their operations are, what their performance has been, and who's actually working on the program. So all of those things are big questions that have to be answered before the end of session, and I'll just keep working through it.
Now, I know you keep up with what's going on here. We've got where the city and the county have taken a 2-week negotiation period to work out the demolition. When they'll get the actual demolition cost for the old Baptist campus on Thursday, they're going to meet next week and try to figure out how to work it out. There's been a rumor and that there is, the state has put up money to help with this demolition. That money's still there, isn't it? It hadn't been pulled out of the project in any way.
No, the only risk that is posed right now is if I have a discomfort with the city's commitment to the project. I mean, I have just kind of like a standard discomfort with the fact that the city still hasn't taken possession of the land in 2 years. There's nothing that's stopped them from taking possession of the land for the past 2 years. So I have a discomfort level with that. But no, I don't believe that they need the county's money to actually fund the demolition fully. And I'll look forward to see what the final numbers are when they come out. But uh, yeah, nothing about the state appropriations contingent upon what the county does. The county can be a partner or not. Um, it's just the states put up $7 million in an appropriation, and then there's an additional, I believe, $3 million from a CDBG grant that was given at post Sally that can be used to improve that property. Maybe not used for demolition specifically, but can be used to improve that property. Between the $7 million from the state and the approximately $6 million from Baptist Hospital themselves, 3 million from the sale of the Paces property, the sale of property to Paces, and then 3 million in general revenue from the hospital itself, we're at least 13 million, if not more. So depending on those numbers, it would be up to the city to tell you right now whether or not they even need the county's money.
Okay. The other issue, of course, is the Chappie James Memorial. This is, Alex, I went back and spent time going through the News Journal's archives and our archives of all the different statements that have been made about this memorial, which was initially just a way to signify that the bridge was named for Chappie James. It was part of the bigger effort to rename the new bridge for the general. Well deserved honor. But what we see now is in 2023, they were supposedly about to break ground. The cost was about $1 million. They were going to break ground. They'd gotten the jet, it had been refurbished. The impression was all they needed was 700,000 from the state, and Senator Broxton was in the position to make that happen. It survived a veto, but nothing happened. I mean, they did a sort of a ceremony about putting up a sign, but they didn't. Nothing's happened. Is there any? You text me yesterday. you're a little concerned about this some too.
I am. I mean, I was. They called it a groundbreaking, but it was just a celebration of Senator Broxton and Mai's work to change the name of the bridge to the Chappie James Bridge. Um, I don't trust the people that run that organization. I've caught them in multiple lies. They've allowed their LLC registration to lapse. I actually had to let Butch Hansen know that they'd let their LLC lapse. I don't think you can have a business bank account if your LLC doesn't exist. I have serious questions about their accounting. They're looking into. I have serious questions about their accounting and their lack of transparency, and I'll keep looking into what commitments they made to the Department of Commerce when they signed their agreement on this appropriation. Because again, I have zero trust, zero faith in the people running that organization to act in good faith or to tell the truth. And their MO seems to be just to accuse people that disagree with them of being either racist or anti-veteran. And if you're lucky, you'll be accused of both. It's just they can't get out of their own way. It seems ego driven and selfish. It seems very entitled. And while it's a great initiative, no one disagrees with the initiative. The people running it just seem incompetent.
Well, it's concerning that if this had been a county project, West Marino would have had it built. If it had been a city project, they would have had it built. If you had $1 million, which by all accounts we think that's what they had at the time, they would figure out how to do it for $1 million, not come back 2 years later and say, well, we need another million. It's hopefully, there's something in that agreement. I'm going to put an open public records request of you. If you do get any documents, I would like to have those, because I think it's just everything's happening outside of sunshine, which as a reporter, that really concerns me. And I think you as a lawmaker, if you're giving somebody $700,000, you would want some accounting for how that money's been spent, or if it's sitting in a bank somewhere. Yeah.
Well, the most embarrassing and dishonest aspect of this whole thing is when they were, combatively fighting to change the name of the bridge, which no one really cared about. They swore up and down that this memorial was going to be fully privately funded. But the best I can tell, all they've done is, collect taxpayer dollars, browbeat, public officials to give taxpayer dollars at the threat of being called racist or anti-veteran. And then there's some bizarre, loan on the books from Chris Joseph for $100,000. I don't want taxpayer dollars going to pay back Chris Joseph for a loan that he gave to this organization. I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer dollars. So I do have some serious concerns about what's going on and why they haven't used the $700,000 the state gave them 2 years ago.
Alex, I know you got a busy slate for you. Thank you for doing this today. I'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Ah,